Bankstown Penrith 20 degrees, Lucas Heights Terry Hills 19, Campbelltown 21. I'm Erin Ma. There'll be more news at 1 on your news leader, Sydney's 2GB.
On 2GB and network stations. This is Afternoons with Michael McLaren.
Well, yes, good afternoon, and thank you very much for your company. It is a very important day. It is Monday, but it is November the 11th. It is Remembrance Day 2024, a day made even more poignant today by the news just coming through that Private Richard Norden has just been awarded a posthumous VC. I'll give you some more details as they really come to light in the next hour or so, but as you will know, the Albanese government was under pressure to award the posthumous Victoria Cross to Rifleman Richard Norden, Private Richard Norden, because of his actions in the Vietnam War, particularly in the Battle of Coral Balmoral in 1968. As Tim Barlas recalled in the Sydney Morning Herald earlier this year, his bravery had become a rallying point within the Australian military community. In fact, the former Governor-General Peter Cosgrove, and I hope to be able to speak with Sir Peter Cosgrove later in the show, and of course Sir Peter also served in Vietnam, said that he was blown away, though his words, blown away when he first read the citation detailing Norden's bravery of more than 50 years ago. He said, and I quote here, "I thought when I read that, this bloke should have got a VC," end quote. Now, according to this article 9 months ago, but this was in August, so let's say the better part of a year ago now, the Defence Honours and Awards Appeals Tribunal recommended to the government that the former Gundagai local should be awarded the Victoria Cross. Well, that has officially happened today. I was just listening to the Governor-General, Sam Marsden, detailing the specifics of this at the Australian War Memorial. The Prime Minister was there, Kim Beazley, who I think is now the man in charge of the War Memorial, and others were in attendance. So I will give you more details of Private Richard Norden, VC, later in the program. It will be a special program today because it is Remembrance Day, and I'll speak with Will Davies, the historian and author, about Remembrance Day, and we will reflect on World War I with Will after 1 o'clock. I'll have a couple of words to say about Remembrance Day in just a moment. Barnaby Joyce will join us as well. I want to go back to this issue of regional tax zones. As you know, we spoke to somebody who's very much in favour of this on Friday's program last week, but Barnaby Joyce has been pushing for this gallantly but in vain, it seems, ever since he arrived on the scene politically in 2005. Now, he sees the merit of this, and I agree with him. If you want to incentivise people to get out of the cities, if you want to populate the north, and I think that's geostrategically smart to want to do that, but also if we want to take pressure out of the populations of our capital cities and decentralise, it's this sort of elusive goal, decentralisation, that we have to incentivise people to do it. There's a very strong magnetic pull drawing people, particularly new migrant communities, into our capital cities. And so we're all heaving under the pressure. If we can counteract that magnetic pull with a little bit of financial incentivization, and say, well, listen, you go live out here, or even if we create a new Canberra of sorts, and if we build a new city, somewhere in regional New South Wales, regional Victoria, doesn't matter. And we say, right, you go there, for 50 years your income tax is going to be X, as opposed to Y if you live in the cities. Then maybe, just maybe, we might be able to implant in some people's minds that this could be a going concern. Now that would be beneficial to everybody. And as I said, I was triggered in looking at this by what the Rugby League have managed allegedly to strike with the government of Papua New Guinea. Well, if it's good enough for them, the principles are transferable, then surely it's good enough for us. I'll speak to Barnaby Joyce about that. Trent is back with Drive, so get all your motoring questions ready for Trent at 1:30. Trent Nicolich, of course, managing editor at drive.com.au, and a whole lot more second giveaways as well for you today. Stay listening if you can. Nice to have your company. 131873. It's 12:15. Well, as you know, today's Remembrance Day. And just over an hour ago, right across the east coast, thousands of Australians paused what they were doing at 11 o'clock. And in an age where traditions are being challenged, if not just swept away, this tradition continues. And it continues an unbroken practice that goes back to 1919, where on the first anniversary of the end of the Great War, 2 minutes silence were observed at the Cenotaph in London. Well, 105 years on, many additional wars later, including, of course, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and recent Middle East deployments, the reflection and consideration afforded by that precious minute of silence compels all of us today, and of course we are the beneficiaries of the cumulative sacrifices of years gone by. I think it compels us today to think about those sacrifices, about those who died, and those who returned but forever changed. In other words, the minute silence is not just a symbolic sort of matter, forced cessation of normal activity. It is not even just a sign of respect, although it is a sign of respect. It's an opportunity for all of us who enjoy the fruits of our democracy and our freedoms to contemplate how that bounty remains within our grasp. And the lesson is in equal part instructive as it is confronting. The hard truth is this: there will always be forces determined to challenge the obvious goodness of freedom. And history is sadly pockmarked by characters who managed to whip up enough support to test militarily the resolve and mettle of democracy's progeny. And as we reflect on the sacrifices of diggers past, we must also be alert to the geopolitical environment that confronts us today. There are powerful forces that have their sights on us, our wealth, our land, our way of life, and they are coalescing. From the Ayatollah's Iran to Xi's China, Putin's Russia and the lunacy that is North Korea, we face an arc of autocracy. It's arming itself for a fight. Now, hopefully diplomacy can prevail, but wise heads know we need a plan B. Now, in generations gone by, that plan B was all too often plan A. And as a result, millions of men had their lives cut prematurely short in muddy battlefields in some far-flung land. But with that said, there are times when it's right to take a stand, when all other options have been exhausted and a military defence of our way of life is necessary. And on this day, we remember such moments of history. Now, unfortunately, some of these lessons of history will always be lost on a portion of the population. For example, there will always be those who falsely claim totemic days like this are all about the glorification of war or a celebration of empire or some such thing. I mean, Remembrance Day is not about glorification or celebration in any respect. Rather, it is anchored in solemnity and respect. But if we ever let a sense of celebration present itself, may it be limited to a celebration of duty, of loyalty, of bravery and of courage. And to those who choose not to reflect on this day, I hope at least they can remember this: you are free to do so only because you live in a free and democratic society. And you only live in a society like this because of the sacrifices the rest of us acknowledge today. Now, as you know, it's become quite the thing in modern Australia to run down our history and interpret our past as being a dark tome of shame and exploitation. And sure, like every civilization, we've had our regrets and we've made our mistakes. But Remembrance Day is a moment when we're able to elevate the best of us into the public consciousness. Like with Anzac Day, Remembrance Day brings names like Fromelles, Villers-Bretonneux, and Gallipoli back into the national conversation. Some were victories, others defeats. But collectively, they were all chapters in our contribution to the eternal fight of good over evil. And despite what some will tell you, we can stand proud that as a nation, we've been on the right side of that fight more often than not. World War I was, of course, meant to be the war that ended all wars. History would prove that to be a fallacy within just 21 years. Many then assumed that following the end of the Second World War, the dropping of the atomic bombs on Japan, that wars of scale would finally come to an end. But Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf Wars and Afghanistan again proved that assumption wrong. And I think it's telling that nowadays the ranks of those willing to ascribe an end to future conflict, well, those ranks are pretty thin. The utopian disposition has, it would seem, left us. Now, the fact that wars continue to rage around the world and that the drumbeats of conflict grow louder even in our own region would no doubt sadden those that survived the First World War if they were still alive to tell their story. Nonetheless, it's the world in which we live. It's the reality that our leaders must confront. It's why AUKUS is important. It's why the US alliance is important. It's why days like today remain as relevant as they were in the immediate aftermath of 1919. And it's why those immortal words, lest we forget, hold such resonance to this day.
Life's a journey, so why not enjoy the ride? Take a back seat and let New South Wales Trainlink do the driving. Take in the scenery together on your way to visit family and friends. Or just take it easy, relax, and enjoy some time to yourself. Our regional train and coach network can take you to more than 365 destinations. But we're all about the journey. To find out more and book your next trip, search New South Wales Trainlink. We'll take you there. A New South Wales government program.
Well, have you or someone you know been injured in an accident? Well,